The camera flash blinded the room, a rhythmic pulse of white light hitting the polished walls. Lina gripped the edge of the display table, her knuckles white, while her mouth pulled into a wide, practiced grin. Beside her, Reem laughed at something a guest said, radiating a warmth that filled the space. They were the center of the frame, two friends celebrated for a shared journey. Then, the photographer moved on. The shutter click died away. Lina let her smile collapse. It did not fade. It vanished, replaced by a line of flat, impenetrable tension. She did not look at Reem. She turned her gaze to the floor, where the light hit the floorboards in harsh, unblinking stripes. Every time Reem reached out to touch her arm or share a whispered joke, Lina stiffened, her breath catching in a shallow, controlled rhythm. The gallery was filled with noise, with clinking glasses and overlapping chatter, but Lina stood in a pocket of silence. She watched Reem bask in the attention, her eyes tracking every movement with a cold, analytical precision. The distance between them was only an inch, but it felt like a canyon. She adjusted her stance, tilted her head, and waited for the next lens to turn their way. The montage began with flickering memories of childhood, dirt-stained knees and shared secrets, then blurred into the sharp reality of the present. Reem was everywhere, her hands deftly shaping silver and gold, her business expanding into the light of public recognition. Each successful sale was a new anchor pulling her further away. Lina watched from the periphery, tethered to a different orbit. Her world had shrunk to the four walls of a dim room, where the air felt heavy and stale. She sat hunched over a laptop, the screen a singular, piercing glow against the shadows. Her sales page remained static, a digital ghost town of zero interest. She scrolled through Reem's latest collection, her finger hovering over the mouse. She felt the pulse of resentment tightening in her chest. She opened a review board, her jaw set, and began to type. She crafted the words with surgical care, weaving doubt into praise, twisting facts into shadows. She clicked submit. The screen blinked, confirming the post was live. Lina pulled her hands back as if burned, but her eyes remained locked on the monitor, watching the first ripple of her interference take hold. The cafe was a pocket of low light and clatter, tucked away from the main street. Lina sat at the back, her fingers tracing the rim of a cold cup. Across the small table, the man in the suit leaned in, his face obscured by the shadow of a hanging lamp. She opened her bag and slid a folder across the wooden surface. It contained a list of vendors, supply chain timelines, and private notes she had scavenged over weeks. She spoke in a low, steady cadence, her voice stripped of hesitation. She did not raise her volume, she did not need to. She outlined Reem's recent production delays, inflating minor setbacks into systemic failures. She watched the man's eyes as he scanned the documents, his expression shifting from curiosity to calculated interest. He tapped the paper, nodding once. That single movement confirmed the deal. Lina felt the weight of her own actions ripple outward. She stood up, leaving the coffee untouched, and stepped out into the cool evening air. The city lights seemed brighter, sharper, as if the world were adjusting to the trajectory she had just set in motion. Reem was currently finalizing her latest contract, unaware that the foundation of her reputation was already being dismantled, brick by silent brick. The office was alive with the hum of success. Reem stood in the center, her hands gripping a thick contract folder, a smile breaking across her face as colleagues gathered to offer congratulations. The room felt expansive, filled with the promise of a major partnership. Lina watched from the far corner, tucked behind a pillar where the light did not reach. She remained motionless, watching the ink dry on the future Reem had built. When the room finally cleared and the last person turned away, Lina moved. Her steps were silent, deliberate, crossing the carpeted floor toward the main workstation. She sat down. The monitor glowed, displaying the internal directory of the project. Her fingers hovered over the keys, shaking with a sudden, violent intensity. She opened the encrypted folder containing the core partnership data. She selected every file, every strategic plan, every trade secret. She opened the recipient field, typed the competitor's address, and paused. For a heartbeat, the room was perfectly still. Then, she pressed send. The progress bar crawled across the screen, a thin line of light marking the point of no return. She sat back, her breath hitching in her throat, watching the confirmation window pop up. The betrayal was complete. The living room was unnaturally quiet. Reem stood by the window, a tablet held steady in her hands. The screen displayed the trail of forwarded files, the timestamps undeniable. She placed the device on the low coffee table and stepped back. Lina stood near the door, her hands clutched together. She did not look at the screen, she looked at the floor. Reem did not shout. Her voice was level, seeing with exhaustion. If you had put even half the energy you spent trying to bring me down into building yourself up instead, where do you think you would be right now? The question hung in the air, stripped of malice, replaced by a devastating clarity. Lina tried to answer, but her breath caught in a jagged, audible sob. She could not find the words to fill the distance between them. Reem turned toward the hallway, her movements measured. She reached the door and pulled it shut. The click of the lock echoed through the apartment. Lina remained standing in the center of the room, the silence pressing in from all sides. She had finally achieved her goal, but the success she coveted was nowhere to be found. Only the weight of the wasted years remained, heavy and absolute in the hollow light.